just allow me to do a quick recap for everyone.
Yeah.
Lula was arrested.
Lula, the former president of Brazil, right?
Former
I forgot
president of
to say that.
Brazil. He was a former union leader who came from a very poor background, and as a lot of Brazilians did, he was born in the northeast of Brazil and in the remote areas. If we want to call places remote, it's always about reference, right? Like it's remote for us who are here, but thought of as remote. And as a lot of Brazilians, he emigrated very young to Sao Paulo, tried to get opportunities. And so he started working in factory working and became a union organizer from that, organized an enormous general strike here in Brazil during the military dictatorships. One of the factors that ended up helping push the military out of power and reinstate mass democracy here. So he hails from the Metal Workers Union, and then he, with the unions and with these urban intellectuals, and in an alliance with some peasant movements, they founded the Workers' Party in the 80s, and had been like building into one of the most important parties in the world. I would argue, definitely the largest left-wing party in Latin America. And what is remarkable about that party is that it not only grew, but it was actually able to take power. Because I feel like in the left, there's like many stories about like these amazing organizations that are so beautiful, but don't end up taking power, and we get like so like inspired by losing, right? And there's a lot of this tendency among the left of being romantic about lost causes, whereas we should be interested in actually taking power and actually materially changing reality. And so this is what is most remarkable about Lula and the Workers' Party, which is that after running many consecutive elections, he was elected president in 2002, re-elected in 2006, left the office in 2010. So these are all 4-year cycles, right? Left the office with like 85% approval, managed to get his handpicked successor elected, who was Dilma Rousseff, a fantastic woman as well. She was a Marxist guerrilla in the military dictatorship. She was arrested and tortured, never gave up any names, even under torture. So that's the kind of person she is. But then we had she was elected and re-elected again. But then we have Lava Jato in 2013, which was an anti-corruption task force hailing from a very small town here in the south of the country, not a place who is usually associated to big, momentous political developments. And it was initially about investigating some shady financial dealings related to Petrobras, the Brazilian public oil company, a giant and very big thorn on the side of these global oil companies. And then Brazil discovered like these huge oil deposits, and then Petrobras became the focus of a lot of international politicking around, and a lot of what Snowden revealed in 2013 and shows that. But anyways, in 2013, we have this the start of this anti-corruption task force that started pulling a thread or somehow, and then kind of the whole house of cards of Brazilian politics kind of crumbled underneath it. And a lot of people say that the task force started as a virtuous endeavor that was corrupted in the middle. Some other people say no, it was a political hit job from the start. But the mainstream narrative goes that, the mainstream narrative that is critical of Lava Jato, the mainstream narrative right. That is in praise of Lava Jato will just say, oh, they were great people doing great work and the corrupt establishment crushed them. But we're all adults here. We know that this is not the case. At some point, they became obsessed with destroying Lula and the Workers' Party, right? In their minds, combating corruption became equal to combating the Workers' Party. So at some point, they get obsessed with Lula, and Lula goes to jail. But in 2018, Lula was set to run because, as we know, Lula was elected in 2002 and 2006, and then Dilma in 2010, 2014. 2016, Dilma was impeached in what most people would consider a parliamentary coup. And then 2018, after 2 years of Dilma's vice president, who betrayed her governing, we were due to new presidential elections, and Lula was the clear favorite to win. Big majority, very popular, was probably going to win. But then he goes to jail and is stopped from running because of a law that was passed during the Workers' Party government, which says that if you have been convicted of a crime, you're not allowed to hold political office. And he gets convicted in these very slimy, very dubious proof. In a way, it's not really proof, but you can see that they were trying to build this case. The result that is of consequence is that he's in jail, unable to run, and Bolsonaro has the lane wide open to win. When Bolsonaro wins, the judge who convicted Lula and who was the judge heading the Lava Jato operation was picked by Bolsonaro to become the justice minister. So you can see the very problematic quid pro quo there. A judge makes a decision that says Lula goes to prison and cannot run. Because Lula is in prison and cannot run, Bolsonaro wins, and then Bolsonaro goes and rewards that judge with the position of justice minister. But as you know, last year, or was it 2019, being stuck at home has kind of warped my sense of time, but we at The Intercept start reporting on these documents that show, with no reasonable doubt, clearly shows that the prosecution, the Anti-Corruption Task Force, was very biased against Lula, and so was the judge. So you can see the prosecutor and the judge cooperating, which is something you wouldn't even want to see at like traffic court, right? You wouldn't want to see the people who are accusing you and the people who are going to decide if you're guilty or not being buddies and exchanging tips and saying, oh, maybe you shouldn't use this proof, use that other one, it's better. Oh, are you sure you're going to do this? Wait, what? You know, the whole thing. And you can also see the way that they were working the media, trying to get these bombastic headlines. And it becomes very clear that it was a very sophisticated way of not only playing the law and playing politics, but also playing the media spectacle game with these very big, media events with like a bunch of cameras following everything, all of that stuff. So now we know, by having read the leaks that we published at The Intercept last year, that the task force was corrupt and that they were obsessed with getting Lula, regardless of what the material proof said.
Yeah, the evidence was, yeah.
Yeah. So this was the picture until 2 weeks ago. Bolsonaro was president. He was basically unopposed, right? He was winning by default because there was no one doing proper opposition against him. Because the way that Bolsonaro got elected was that a lot of people like to blame it on the left or on the center left. But the issue is that the center left got and the left got about the same chunk of votes in every election, like in the first round, because we do like they do in France. Maybe people will be familiar with runoff elections. So everyone runs in the first round and then second round to decide who's going to be president. So in the first round, the left got like about 40 to 45% of the vote in every election. And it was the same in 2018. But the thing is that the center right collapsed. The center right got sucked into the far right. So the center right party that usually polarized with the Workers' Party, so 45 to 45, and then the runoff, would be a small difference. They got 5% of the vote, and the center right, everyone just voted for Bolsonaro.
Yeah, that's a really important point that is not made often.
Yeah,
like you almost never hear that when people analyze what went wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It was the center right that collapsed, and the Bolsonaro, the far right, occupied that vacuum because there was no one to occupy because it was mainly a PT against whoever else, right?
The Workers' Party on the left.
Yeah.
The Lulas Party, right? Yeah.
Yeah. PT, Workers' Party on the left against whoever else gets to agglutinate the right-wing forces. And Bolsonaro, the most extreme right-wing person in government now around the world, I would wager. Maybe there's like a few people who are just as far right as him, but right up there on the top 5 of awful people in the world. Henry Kissinger doesn't count; it's like in a different category. So we were in this situation in which Lula was barred. He was just out of the political game forced out because he was legal, even though he had been released from jail already.
Yeah.
He was still convicted, but just not in jail yet. But then last week, a judge came and basically annulled the whole thing.
Wow.
And now Lula's conviction is canceled, doesn't exist anymore, which is great news for everybody except for Bolsonaro. But there's some insidious stuff going on in there, which is a good to give a breakdown of, because although it was great for Lula and it was bad for Lava Jato, it was also seen as a maneuver to protect Lava Jato. So I'm going to explain very briefly. So as I said in the beginning, this task force was based in a small city in the south of Brazil. And there was like a task force to investigate financial crimes related to Petrobras. So their jurisdiction was not a territorial jurisdiction like most of the justice in Brazil works. So if I go on the street, I'm in Rio de Janeiro, go on the street to kill someone, I'm going to be judged by the Rio de Janeiro justice. Lula lives in Sao Paulo.
Don't do it, Victor.
No, I have no plans for that. So Lula lives in Sao Paulo. Petrobras is in Rio de Janeiro, and politics happens in Brasilia. So why was this court in Curitiba judging all of this stuff, right? And they had to make the case that it had to do with Petrobras. Otherwise, they wouldn't have standing to judge it. I think that's how we call it in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
So this is how they claim to have standing, by saying that it was related to Petrobras financial crimes, even though by reading the leaked messages that they exchanged, we can now see that not even then they were convinced that it was the link was clear. But nonetheless, they got away with it for a long time. And that was years ago, and it just been going on like that. And Lula's defense and most of Lava Jato defendants, although for a lot of the people who were stuck in the Lava Jato NAD, there's very clear connections between the corruption, them, and Petrobras, right? So with Lula, it was just more egregious with everyone else. And then we released these messages by proving that the judge and the task force was biased, and they were not fair. They were bad referees, right? And then the Supreme Court was about to pick up and judge on that. And there was an understanding. Most people would think that the Supreme Court would decide in favor of Lula and declare the judge and the task force biased against Lula, right? So this was what most people who read the tea leaves would think that the Supreme Court was about to decide. So before they could decide that, this other judge who was pro Lava Jato did that thing where they said, you know what, this thing about Curitiba judging Lula, this is wrong. They don't have standing. So, throw it all out of the table, clear it all. So the whole judgment from day one with regards to Lula was annulled because the judge said Curitiba doesn't have standing to judge Lula.
Wow.
But most people were like, okay, but you only know that now, all these years later, like, so
Right.
what people think and what is a reasonable conclusion to reach is that, as we say here in Brazil, there's an expression that says you give away your rings so that you don't lose your fingers. So
Right.
he was giving away the rings, Lula, like, so, okay, Lula's judgment is not here, it's not bad, so that he could save his fingers, which were, let's not declare the Lava Jato task force as a whole biased.
Oh, I see. Right. So it's just a
But then,
technical. He did it on a technical issue.
Yeah, he was like,
Legal
okay, fine,
technicality.
whatever. Lula, you're
Technicalities,
you're free. Go away. Fine, Lula. You're not
Right.
convicted for this. You're innocent. Forget about the whole bias thing, right? There's
Right.
no harm done. This judgment is off. So who cares? But a lot of people care, and turns out that another judge in the Supreme Court who hates Lava Jato saying, screw that, I'm going to judge him as biased anyways. So that's still happening. But this was the maneuver that most people understand that happened, was that, yeah, fine, we lose Lula, the big trophy, but we get to keep the whole edifice of Lava Jato. Regardless of the judicial and shenanigans that happen, whatever it is, the reality is that Lula is now a free man. His convictions have been annulled. He's able to run for whatever he wants to run. He's never been convicted of anything. He has a clean slate. He gets to run. Fantastic. One day after that, he did a big speech that was basically just like a breath of fresh air into like reality in Brazil by just seeing like a normal person with a brain and like minimal levels of empathy and
Right.
politics, doing a speech about like everything. And you can see like the different game that they're playing, like how much more capable Lula is than possibly any politicians in the West, I would say. And I'm only saying the West because I don't know the East that well. So maybe there's like some guy who's better than Lula. I don't want to like claim that there isn't, but I know the West, and for sure,
No
maybe
disrespect to the
Obama
Lulas of the
is
East.
right there in political capacity and
Talent.
you
You're
know,
talking about like political talent.
Yeah, raw talent, like just knowing like what to say. And he did like a 2-hour speech without reading from anything and just hitting all the buttons.
Fidel would outdid him on that, but still, it's still impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Fidel was always like 10-hour speeches.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is not something that we're ready to do here in Brazil.
Right.
So he did that and was just like, look, we need to get these vaccines. Why the fuck has this guy not gotten any vaccines yet? And you just see that he was working, like he was doing the work a president should have done. So he got in calls with like the people in Russia who did the Sputnik vaccine. And, you know, he's just like working, right? And then immediately you could see that Bolsonaro was like, damn it. And like scrambling, they already replaced the health minister like yesterday. So we are in the fourth health minister just during COVID pandemic. There were 4 different health ministers. The previous guy was a general, however many star generals, and was just atrociously bad. But just now we just know that the whole board, the whole chessboard is appended. And now that Lula is like one of the voices in there. He's in there, and most people will say that, okay, fine. Now, before Lula was back in the game, the idea was like, okay, who's going to be the person who's going to go to runoff against Bolsonaro? Could we get anyone who's going to defeat him? And now the conversation has switched to, will Bolsonaro be able to beat whoever else and get to the second round with Lula? Or will the center-right be able to rebuild itself and polarize with Bolsonaro? Because before, Bolsonaro was polarizing with Lula in an imaginary sense because Lula wasn't there to be polarized with. And the center-right didn't really have anything like to present to anyone. Yeah. But now they have an enemy, Lula, and now Bolsonaro and whoever else is going to appear are fighting for that spot, like that other spot. So things are much different now. Just today, Lula did an interview with Alan Poor on CNN International, in which it was like, hey, Biden, you should like do a G20 meeting and get like vaccines to the third world, you know, like, it's just like
no, they're not going to do that.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. But you know, like the president should be like calling him and asking for that.
Right. You're saying right.
Bolsonaro, and then like one day after it came out that Lula had done that, like Bolsonaro came out and released a letter that like he had, you know, you're just seeing that.
Don't give any vaccines away, Biden.
Yeah, exactly. And now we see that on a report actually by Brazil Wire, was an independent outlet reporting about Brazil in English, that the U.S. State Department pressured the Brazilian government, pressured Bolsonaro not to buy the Sputnik vaccine. So now we don't have any of that because the department told them not to buy it.
The U.S. did that?
Yeah.
Leslie,
I mean, the U.S. is always doing so well for everyone else.
I know. It's so surprising.
Just looking out for you.
Just looking out for you. You don't want to be infected by Putin tainted life-saving vaccines. That would suck.
Yeah.
Better
exactly.
better dead than red. Not that he's red, but
Exactly,
people
yes.
are so fucking dumb.
Yeah.
But, wow, yeah. Well,
So yeah.
wow. Well, thank you for that great update.